Just imagine, you're the #1 quarterback recruit in the country coming out of high school. You're a 5-star with college offers from pretty much everywhere. Alabama, Auburn, USC, Arizona State, you name it. There's a lot of expectations and pressure that comes along with it. Well, today I'm sitting down with Max Browne. And if you didn't know Max, coming out of high school, that description I just said, that was Max. I mean, he was so highly desired, Nick Saban called him in the middle of his high school class. But Max's college football career didn't really go as he would expect it, and he'd be the first person to tell you that. That said, he's carved out a fantastic career in media and broadcasting, and we're going to dive right into that. So without further ado, my conversation with Max Browne. So what was your earliest memory of football?
Probably my first memory, like literally 5 years old. My oldest brother was the quarterback of my high school's team. They went on to win a state title, and like those are like literally my first core memories of my parents making me nap before his games at 5, 6 years old, so then I could stay up through 10:30 p.m. And go to his games. And yeah, grew up in went to a public school, but the community I was in Seattle, which people always kind of like say, what, like Seattle football suburbs, like what? But it was no joke. We had like a run there of like 6 years where all of our public high school teams were nationally ranked. So it was like a big deal in my community. So football's like always been a part of my life.
Skyline doesn't mess around.
Doesn't mess around. It's changed a little bit nowadays. My best bud's the head coach, so got love for the program. But it's a different tier now than where it was 15 years ago.
And whether it was high school, even like middle school, pre high school, when did you kind of settle in to realize that you wanted to be a quarterback?
Yeah, it's always funny. I've gotten iterations of that question, but like I don't remember a world where that wasn't the dream. Like literally first grade recess, I can remember like the balls rolled out, and for whatever reason, maybe it's because was arrogant or something, but like I was picking teams first grade recess. And then I remember third grade, my team being the only team that would throw the ball at all. Like every team in youth football is running the ball, we were throwing the rock. I remember in like sixth grade running no huddle, and like that was crazy. But it was like all part of just this dream. But honestly, it felt more than that. It felt just like a calling, so to speak, which kind of sounds crazy now as like a 30-year-old man that doesn't play football anymore. But yeah, I think it really kicked into gear though, like my 7th grade year, which again is crazy even just saying that. But 7th grade, again, went to a public school, so you can kind of map out like, all right, who's the 8th grade quarterback, who's the 9th grade quarterback, who am I going to have to beat out kind of thing. And yeah, the quarterback before me at my high school was the #1 quarterback in the country, so you can kind of like map it out. And that's when the private quarterback coaching came into play, and you kind of realize like, I mean, it's crazy. You're only like, 12, 13 years old, but that's when it starts, at least for me, and it feels like that's still the case nowadays with kids.
It's crazy how, just a quick tangent, but it's crazy how some of these sports have like evolved with youth. Like you see hockey prodigies or like tennis prodigies, and they start like that. People will move to different states, or even to, like in hockey, say Canada or someplace, and it's like that is their whole life. Is a school is secondary. It is even at like in high school or middle school. That is your entire life.
Seriously, I always think like the IMG academies of the world. Like if I had gone to a bad public high school, like what would that have looked like for me? Do I go to find a way to get it like, O'Days where like Taylor Mays went in Seattle? Like it's just absolute blessing to like fall into a awesome football scenario. But like, is there a world that I fly out of Seattle to go to Florida for IMG Academy? Like maybe. Luckily I didn't have to go through that decision, but like that's real for kids, and I empathize with the parents that have to make that decision.
Totally. So you get to high school, and yeah, walk me through the QB competition, whether it was like started freshman year or when that started.
Yeah, I mean, reality is it wasn't that much of a quarterback competition in the sense that like I remember being stoked. I was an 8th grader, spring of my 8th grade year, like summer's about to hit going into 9th grade. And I got invited to like our varsity team camp as like the only freshman going there, which then I knew like that was unique, that was different. And then I was, like I referenced earlier, I was the backup my freshman year to the #1 quarterback in the high school in country. Jake Heaps went to BYU, 5-star guy. And so like, it was pretty clear, like, you're not having full-on backup quarterback battles at high school necessarily. I guess you maybe kind of are, but I don't know. The separation was there. And then so I literally remember the cover of the Seattle Times when we ended up winning state my freshman year, that quarterback senior year. It was basically like the headline was like the passing of the torch, and I like got in the fourth quarter in our state championship game my freshman year, and it was always just like, who's going to be the guy that has to replace Jake Heaps, and it was this curly-headed Napoleon Dynamite looking guy, 6'3", $175, and at the time people were like, dude, Skyline's screwed, and then luckily it was a good little run there the next 3 years.
It's high school football is just so, especially when you're in like a city like that, it's just so like pure. I know that NIL plays so much more of a factor now, and it's just, you know, the money, and I think it's great, but it's just like, it's craziness now. It's the Wild West, but, and maybe there's still a little bit more of that purity, but like even I, a little bit played high school football like freshman, sophomore year, and just that feeling of like the whole town coming together, like knowing everybody on the team, and I didn't play obviously at the next level, but like it's just so pure. And totally. I feel like a lot of kids even these days, you like everybody knows who the 5-star is of their team. Everybody knows that this guy's going to Texas, and we got to stop this running back. If this running back plays, like we're going to lose automatically. Like it's just in the digital world, there's just that much more distribution and craziness. And I don't know, I feel like it's like lost a little bit of that purity. But yeah, I just wanted to make that point because
I feel like it's a good point. And then I live in Southern California, and like the Trinity League is widely considered, I guess, the best league, high school football league in the country. But like it gets me thinking, I live in Santa Monica. Like if my kid wanted to play big time football, you're probably got to transfer or buck up as a parent to like a 45-minute commute and go to one of these private schools. That's just kind of the reality of what it is, which makes me appreciate my public school setup in high school, where we were playing all public schools and obviously different demographics and whatnot. But yeah, grateful for that chapter for sure.
100%. So you start your sophomore year on and start racking up the numbers. Do you remember the first time a school reached out? And what was that? And again, I know that, again, you come from this, like the quarterback before you, number 1 in the country, 5-star, but still, I'm sure that for you personally was just this like crazy feeling that a school was finally reaching out and you're like, I got my first offer.
100%. The first time a coach reached out was the first time I ever got an offer. So I got an offer actually before I started a high school game. It was the weekend after my freshman year of high school. It was the UW 7-on-7 camp, and Sark pulled me and my parents aside, which is cool all these years later because Sark's like as relevant as any head coach in college football. And he offered me, his offensive coordinator was Doug Nussmeier, who's Garrett Nussmeier's dad, which is also funny. Again, 15 years later, all those last names are still relevant in the game of football, which is awesome. But it was a shock. I mean, I knew I was on that trajectory to like get offers, but I always thought like, dude, you got to play in pads and, actually show something on the field before that happens. But showed enough, I guess, during the 7-on-7 camp to get the offer. It was funny though, because they were like, and this shows like kind of how I was wired as a teenager, but they were like, yeah, we're going to give you the offer, but like, don't tell anyone. And I was the type of kid that like, mighty head coach for University of Washington says don't tell anyone. I'm not telling anyone. Like I may have told, so I told my family and they said that was cool. But I was the guy that was like probably double checking that. And like I don't even think I told my best friend just because I was like so nervous at that point. It's like, you don't want to mess it up. Like this is the dream kind of thing. In hindsight, knowing what I know now, if you're a 5-star kid, like the coach is offering you and they're expecting you to tell everyone. Like it's a pleasant surprise when you're not telling every newspaper outlet. Mm-hmm. And then luckily I had success that year, that football season. So then it was just kind of a given that I got offered. But actually I didn't finish that story. They told me not to tell anyone because they were after Brent Huntley, who it was between Washington and UCLA for him. He obviously had a great career at UCLA, but supposedly they didn't want to like, spook him with like the young hometown kids. So they were like, don't tell anyone. I don't know. That's just the stories that I've heard. But again, funny how all that stuff plays out.
The unspoken NDA. You're like,
exactly.
I can't say anything.
But I wasn't like, I feel like high school kids now would be, tweeting it out, Instagram stories, the whole deal. I was like, I can't jeopardize this. I gotta keep it close to the vest.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the recruiting process of high school kids now because, kids, I'm sure, and again, I played very minimally in high school, but kids, I'm sure now, back then, even now, just probably like regularly check 24/7 Sports, Rivals, ESPN. Like, were you doing that too, or when you first knew you like? What was your first? Was it a 3-star, 4-star? Were you like immediately a 5-star? I have no knowledge of that process. So like, what is that?
It's a good question. How did it start?
Because I'm not trying to age you. I know it's not.
No.
Then,
I think.
But...
And I said this, I think I was always and only a 5-star. I remember there's a scene I remember. It was my signing day of your junior year of high school. At the time, Scout.com was like the go-to site for me and all my friends. It was Scout, Rivals, and ESPN were the big three. But Scout was like my go-to. And I remember signing day of your junior year, they came out with like the first star rankings. I think before that they had like generic rankings, but then actually slapping a star on your name. I remember being in my high school parking lot with my 2003 Honda Accord, like driving out, and someone like stopped me and was like, "Yo, Brown, like Scouts got your ratings up." And it was me, Shane Morris, who went to Michigan, and Tyrone Swoops, who went to Texas, were the 3 5-stars. I think those guys may have fluctuated. No, Shane was always up there. I think we all ended up being 5 stars, but like that was the first ranking, and then Christian Hackenberg came later. But yeah, I mean that junior year, ironically, signing day was my birthday, so I always remember that of my junior year. It was 5-star, and that was always the deal.
Yeah, and somewhere in that process, it was probably around your junior year or something, along with the stars was like the actual ranking, and you were number 1 in your class, ahead of some of those guys, right? Like Baker Mayfield, Christian Hackenberg, some of those guys. You name.
I didn't even know who Baker was in high school.
I feel like a lot of people probably didn't.
The 3 most successful guys in my class are Jared Goff, Josh Allen, and Baker Mayfield. Did not know who Josh Allen was. Did not know who Baker Mayfield was at all. Jared Goff, I met him at USC's junior day, and coincidentally, like we were all after that same USC offer, and USC only offers. At that time, it was kind of like if USC offered you, like you take that. They offered me, and I'm blanking on his name. He ironically ended up signing with Oklahoma, and Baker beat him out. But anyways, and it was kind of like first guy to take it gets it, and USC was always the pinnacle for me as like a West Coast growing up kid with I wasn't a huge like Husky fan necessarily, and so got offered like a month later, committed to the Trojans.
Yeah, that's wild. I know, because I mean, you had offers you could have gone anywhere. You could have Alabama, probably Georgia. But
could have gone anywhere. The schools that didn't like me were Notre Dame didn't like me. They never offered me. Michigan offered Shane Morris, the hometown kid, instead of me, and I liked Michigan. Michigan was cool. I actually visited there. But there were a few schools. UCLA, ironically, was late to the party, like the 2 rivals of USC, Notre Dame and UCLA. But yeah, I got to the point where I only had like 18 offers. To me, guys that go above 25, it's like, dude, give me a break. You know for a fact the 26 school, you are not going there. Yeah. You're doing that just for clout. So I get the question every once in a while, like, oh, how many offers did you have? It's like, oh, well, technically like 19 or something. But at a certain point, you're realizing the school for me was always Duke. Like Duke kept sending me mail. There's no way I'm ever going to Duke as a kid from Seattle with a bunch of other offers that you're flying over to get there.
Yeah, West Coast kid at heart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I wanted to I won't harp on this for too much, but it's just so interesting to me. Like so I'm a West Coast guy too. Born and raised in Oregon, and I think it's probably. I don't think this is fair necessarily to say, but I would say Washington schools and Oregon schools in terms of like high school football are probably more similar on the spectrum than something like a Texas or a Georgia or like a Florida, those high schools. And maybe I'm wrong to say that, but was there some sort of, and I don't know if you realized this back in the day because you also had your prior quarterback at Skyline being the number 1 QB in the country, but and maybe this is just my naivete, but was there also kind of just some sort of proud feeling of like, I'm the number 1 quarterback in the country out of Washington. It's not a Allen, Texas. It's not a Alabama. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's just,
yeah.
Did you ever have, maybe like now looking back, was that, or am I just totally wrong?
No, you're fair. And you're saying more that like, hey, the comp between Oregon and Washington is more similar to the comp between like Washington and Texas. Right?
Yeah. Well, I just mean like, I think it's probably fair to say that there's significantly more collegiate college football prospects that come out of like Texas and Florida and Alabama, that area, than like the West, and totally exclude California, but then like the Pacific Northwest, specifically of Washington and like Oregon.
100%. Yeah, no, I was very prideful of that. Even like, being a USC hadn't taken a scholarship quarterback outside of the state of California. I couldn't even name you that kid. It was at least, I mean, I guess it's a little bit of a lie. I guess it's a lie. They took John David Booty. So, but like it was rare. Like they're always going Southern California. So yeah, I wore the Washington badge of honor with pride. Nowadays, I kind of get the inverse of that, of people giving me crap of like, yo, if you would have been a Trinity League guy, like you would have never been rated a 5-star guy, or like how would your career would have been different kind of thing. And, those are, I guess, fun and interesting conversations to dive down. But I was super prideful of that, especially because I went to a school that was nationally ranked. So I remember being roommates with Sua Cravens, and he went to Vista Marietta, who was like the number 3 team in the country at a high school. My high school was like the 9th team in the country, or maybe we were like 19th, I think. Whatever, we fluctuated. But then like Bellevue, Miles Jack's school, was the number 1 school, and that was the school that I beat them. That was my first win as a starter in high school as a sophomore. And so point being is like we would battle of like you saying Washington's trash, but like they got the number 1 team in the country. Bellevue is Miles Jack, Buda Baker, those guys, and Sue was trying to say like, you'd get eaten up. And so you get to those locker rooms, and it's just like the LeBron Jordan debates. Everyone's got pride in their hometown, and I certainly wore that with pride all the time.
Totally. I mean, there's so many people that even like down, like, if you're a prospect in Oregon, that doesn't mean much. But like you look at Elijah Molden, Sam Levitt, and Ndamukong Suh, like there's some solid guys, and like whether it's the relativity of who they're playing, but you just can't expand past outward. I mean, it's just a
totally,
guess.
And that's like the beauty of recruiting, right?
Yeah.
Like there's guys that pop up out of like Idaho, and even a guy like my 2 receivers in high school my sophomore year were Kason Williams on one side, 5-star guy, went to Washington, played for the Seahawks for a little bit. And then Jordan Simone, who is the forgotten guy, if we're being honest, from a recruiting standpoint, walks on to Arizona State, has a better college career than all of us. And so it's just like development, timing, landing spots, how you're wired. Like that's the beauty of, recruiting.
There's so many factors. So you get to USC, immediately thrust into a quarterback competition. Had the opportunity to start, right? Freshman year.
Yeah.
And I believe it was Cody Kessler and Max Whittick.
Yep.
Yeah.
Strongest arm I've ever seen.
The man.
Max Whittick.
And it's interesting, when I brought up the quarterback competition in high school, that was purposeful because, I feel like, at least this was sort of my minimal experience. I wasn't a quarterback in high school, but, the quarterback competition was like, these guys. These are like your peers in class. These are like maybe some friends. But this was probably your first experience of like guys you probably had no idea who they were. What was that kind of like that competition like at USC when you first get there as a freshman?
Yeah, it's cutthroat, especially at a place like USC because, all the terms of like you're taking food off another man's table and like USC is always going to get the best recruit every year. And like those are very much like the narratives. And I walked into that quarterback room with that mentality. And I think looking back on that first battle, because I had basically a quarterback battle every single year in college, but that first battle, I don't want to speak for him, but my read on the situation is Cody and I had this similar temperament of like, hey, we'll be cordial and like we're not going to be dicks, but like I'm trying to get this job, you're trying to get this job, let's fight it out. And like I'm not here for like foo-foo love, like all that stuff. Again, it's not like it was like awkward in the meeting rooms, which I think average college football fans don't realize. Like you think it's going to be just like you're at each other's necks all the time. If that's how you're wired, it's going to be a long season because you're spending so many times with these guys. But that first quarterback job, I always wished I had a little bit more of like Max Whittick's mentality, which was more similar to Sam Darnold a little bit a couple years later of like, I feel like they didn't get into the whole like, they weren't as intense and they weren't as, like they obviously knew there was a quarterback battle and obviously everyone wants to play and fight it out, but I didn't get the sense that they carried that like weight with them that I know I carried. I would say I think Cody did a little bit as well. And I just think it makes for more stressful days. I don't think you play as your best football with that mentality. So I always admired Sam's mentality with that, but also Max's as well, being competitors, but it seemed like they had a levity to them that was easier. And Max would like joke around in meetings and all that. And I think as the college years went on, because I had so many battles, I think I got better with that. But that first year, I mean, I had only had football success my entire life. So the thought of like not winning the quarterback job was like, in my head, I knew I wasn't like a failure, but dude, like the pressure and the responsibility to like, like put on for yourself and your hometown and all that, I very much like felt that first year.
Yeah, and I'm actually glad you brought that up because this is something I feel like not a lot of people talk about, but especially as like a young kid, what are you, 18, 19?
Yeah, I mean, I technically enrolled at USC as a 17-year-old.
Wow.
And then, turned 18 during spring ball.
And maybe you didn't, but in that time, how did you kind of keep your head on straight, like mentally, talking about mental health, like how did you deal with maybe that total difference of like, for lack of better terms, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Like I'm not that main guy. I'm not number one. How did you kind of deal with that?
I didn't struggle with like the ego part of that, to be honest, which inherently is contradictory because me saying that is showing ego, which is funny. But I always, and I give my parents a lot of credit for that. Like I never really got caught up in the hoopla of like the recruiting cycle and like, my shit doesn't stink and all that kind of stuff. So I walked in with a like, hey, I'm going to have to earn this thing kind of mentality. And maybe that worked to my detriment. Maybe if I had a little bit more like pompous swagger and whatnot, that like maybe that would have helped me out as a younger quarterback. But that part I didn't struggle with as much. I struggled more with hey, when I did lose that quarterback competition and I did struggle to adapt to like the speed of the game and I wasn't playing quarterback at the level that I wanted to, that I expected to, that I was hoping to, that dealing with that and kind of being like, oh, wow, this equation that I had my entire life of like, if I work hard and I treat people right, sweet, I'm going to have success. I'm outworking everyone, feel like I'm treating people right, doing what I need to do, and I'm not having success. Dealing with that was the hardest part. And from a mental health standpoint, I ultimately saw a sports psychologist, and you would have never got this out of me back then, but I do think I had some level of like performance anxiety that in hindsight, if I was in school now, maybe I would have been more proactive with that. But obviously the stigma and the connotation around it back then wasn't where it is now. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of both sides to that question.
Yeah, and the difficulty that you might have had at USC over a few years too. Just talking about the uncontrollables, right? Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but every year you were at USC was a different head coach.
Yeah. I mean, let's see. Let's go.
Because it was Lane.
It was Lane. Then Orgeron was the interim head coach, and then it was
Clay.
Then it was Sark in 2014. That started as Sark in 15, but then Clay was the interim head coach. That's why I knew there was something in there. So Clay was technically head coach for a season and a half, and then Narduzzi at Pitt to finish it out.
Which is just crazy. But back to USC, like, I'm sure I don't know you super well, but I can just understand. I can feel like you wouldn't place blame, but like I'm sure that also just inherently had a significant struggle with your college career. Like that many coaches is it's tricky, difficult.
Yeah, I mean it's I don't think it's like the reason my college career didn't work out. That's how I usually answer that question, but it certainly was not like the most advantageous factor for sure. Like, again, I was a guy who I had very much growing pains year one in college football. And then in year two to have a whole new offense and kind of start that over again. And, in your mind, you're like, hopefully I'm past that stage and I'm not having to think about the playbook and I'm not having to think about like breaking the huddle and things like that. Where then, no, it was kind of, I had to do that over again my redshirt freshman year. That was probably the one, if I had to pinpoint like, hey, what was the biggest negative impact during the coaching changes? It was probably that. But then even as I say that, the opposite of like, I think, and there's a reason Sark and Kiffin have changed their offenses, the Sark offense was more quarterback friendly. So I'm glad we changed away from the 2013 offense. But still, all that change is not good for any quarterback getting in a rhythm.
Definitely, yeah. And so at some point you make the decision that you're going to transfer. And you do transfer to Pitt, but were there other schools that you were considering as well?
Not really, to be honest. I mean, Boston College had reached out, Fresno State had reached out, but to Pitt's credit, and Pitt's still doing this thing. Pitt keeps getting big-time transfers coming in. Their quarterback this year's a Alabama transfer. But, like, I remember I was a captain on that 2016 team at USC. I was running scout team because I was the backup at that time, and they wanted to, get the best look kind of thing. But I remember going off the practice field in late October at USC and talking to Pat Narduzzi that night, like mid-season, and like Pitt's tight end coach who recruited me there. Fully legal. I had like my permission to contact, but it was bizarre. Like it was, I'm wearing a USC uniform, but very much like planning for my next step because I knew I had to transfer. It was Darnold's gig, but Pitt was proactive with it, and I got to a point where people forget Pitt was the number one offense in the country in 2016 with Nate Peterman, Tyler Boyd, James Conner, and they were number one offense in the country. Pitt was a top 25 team. On paper, they had a huge void at quarterback, which is ironic because the two guys they had were Kenny Pickett and Ben DiNucci, who were NFL starters. But on paper, they had a void. And so I was like, what am I waiting on? And I wanted one thing I had in my head is I knew I wanted to get into a school, but get into a school to play in spring ball. I thought that was important. And to do that, I had to be enrolled somewhere by January 3rd. So there was a little bit of a urgency to that. And I was kind of like, if not Pitt, what am I waiting on? Took a visit out there, and the rest is history.
Yeah. And what was that like always being, for your entire life, being a West Coast kid and then going out to Pitt? Yeah. What was that like?
It wasn't that big of an adjustment. I feel like I'm kind of wired, and we were talking offline before this. Your temperament reminds me the same way. Of kind of like, if I need to be a Pittsburgh guy, a LA guy, a Northwest guy, East Coast guy, I feel like I can assimilate to the different cultures, but I liked it. It's a much more beautiful city than I thought it was going to be.
That's what I've heard. I've never been there.
As a West Coast guy, you hear steel mills, and you're watching history videos of some dark, dire places. But then you literally drive into the city, and it's the whole reason Pittsburgh exists is because it's where three rivers meet, and it's a sweet setup, the baseball park, the whole deal. So it's an awesome city. I definitely could have lived there if life had unfolded differently in a different set of cards. I could have lived there a long time.
Totally. And so you get to Pitt, had that quarterback competition, and you're competing against DiNucci and Kenny Pickett, right? You said
Kenny. Kenny was the true freshman. I don't think he was expecting to play year one, so it wasn't really competing with him, but he was very much there, and he finished the year as our starter, ironically enough. But yeah, it was DiNucci, and then at the time, Thomas McVitie. But yeah, that was my fourth battle in college.
Yeah.
I didn't play as well as I was hoping to in spring. They had a unique offense with a bunch of jet sweeps. That was the quarterbacks that listen to this will appreciate that. It's just, it was a different way of learning that. But then finally found my stride in the summer and fall camp and won that battle. I got benched week 3 for DiNucci. He came in. That we didn't have success. I started week 5 and then got hurt week 6.
You can't gloss over that Rice game, though.
It's a good game.
Come on now.
It's a good game. Week 5. You've done your notes. I respect it.
I made a whole video on it, remember?
That's right. That's right, dude. That's right. I mean, that's the one game that at least I had that one game. It was proof of concept of all right, all the success I had on practice fields over the years that, they're not just handing out starting jobs at USC and Pitt, finally was able to show on that one Saturday. I just wish there were a few more.
But seriously, I mean, the just challenges that you faced at USC, the transferring, thousands of miles away, all the quarterback competition, following that game, there's just, what was your feeling? You're probably just super proud of yourself, I would imagine.
Yeah, proud, but honestly just relief. Again, I had done, I mean, when you're that efficient, I think I had 4 incompletions that day.
It was 88%, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's how every quarterback envisions every game should go, right? You have the read, this is the coverage they give you, here's where the ball goes. And it was just an easy, perfect game, but it was relief because I just had done that many times on the practice field for that to finally show out on Saturdays after that not really showing out the previous 5 starts that I had. Relief was the biggest emotion.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you finished out your college career, and correct me if I'm wrong, you actually took part in an NFL tryout with the Steelers?
Yeah, so I got hurt in right after that game, October of 17, rehabbed all of 18, got invited to rookie mini camps and all that, 5-6 different rookie mini camps during that draft season. I couldn't throw because my right shoulder got hurt. And then December of 19, so almost 18 months after, I basically got to a point where I was it's now or never. There's going to be another quarterback class coming in here. I don't know. I was ready to just kind of now or never energy and had to work out for the Steelers and the Commanders just before Christmas of 19.
Nice. And then we were talking offline, but following your football career, you said, "Hey, I'm going to head out to New York City," and you start working for Gary Vee.
Yeah, and legend.
Was that sort of your first time? And we'll get into this in just a moment too, but diving into the content, the media space?
Yeah. I think so. The backstory with getting the Gary Vee job is that fall when I was trying to train when I was training for the NFL, I would always make 4 egg omelets and listen to Gary Vee on YouTube. And I just felt like his message was what I needed at that time. I felt like people were kind of sugarcoating my career and like treading lightly around how to position my career. And I always respected and still do how blunt Gary is and his delivery. I think that it was what I needed at that time. And so it got me thinking of like, hey, what do I want to do whenever football's done? I was hoping that would, expand longer, but I was also, in touch with reality of being an undrafted quarterback with limited college film, like kind of what that meant. And I always had the intuition of what the content world could be. Like I remember people kind of looking at you cross-eyed when I said, hey, I'm going to go work for Gary Vee and like in this content space. And I'll never forget someone that I really admire to this day, kind of like sat me down, pulled me aside and was like, Max, like, good on you for like, getting a new experience, but like content is a job. It's not a career. So like, hopefully you can like learn some things, but you like can't make a career out of that. And this guy's made millions in the business world. And I just remember in my gut being like, that dude's wrong. Like that it's just wrong. Like what the trajectory that content was on spoke to me. I got my master's in marketing at Pitt too. So I kind of had been thinking that way. And that's a long-winded way of saying when football did wrap up for me, a piece of advice I got was if you don't know what you want to do, which I didn't know what I want to do, go work for someone you admire. And Gary was a dude that I admired. Sam Darnold, funny enough, made the intro to Gary. And about a month later, I flew out to New York and worked for Gary for a year.
That's awesome.
It's a great story.
So you worked for Gary for a year, spend your time in Manhattan. Then you head back to LA?
Back to LA after working for Gary for a year, and then I worked for a guy by the name of Lewis Howes, big podcaster, School of Greatness.
Yep.
Thinking that, hey, I still wanted to leverage the Gary experience, still play in the content world. I liked that space and worked for Lewis for 6 months, which was a weird 6 months because it was the pandemic. Like I literally started that gig the Friday before like the world shut down, or like 3 days before the world shut down. But then it was a blessing in disguise because I think I realized, I don't really want to build other people's dream. I kind of want to build my own thing and not be a behind the scenes guy, be a forward facing guy. I pivoted that into real estate. So another pivot there, but that content learning, content experience with both those guys, Gary and Lewis, was invaluable for what I do now.
I even remember the real estate days for you because I remember like following you, and it was kind of like some stuff you'd post on your story of like, oh, new listing, commercial real estate world. But then you'd also do like your videos. I remember that.
Dude, I mean, it's so funny looking back. And I had this conversation at a wedding with someone a couple of weeks ago where like, when you were observing my life, people on the outside are probably like, dude, there's no way that's sustainable. Like, what are you doing? You got to pick one. Or like, even more so, like, Max, you're a football guy. Like, go all in on the football side. But for me, like, I told myself this story that I could like, be a real estate broker 9 months out of the year and then dial it back and be a, color commentator, broadcaster during football season. And then I realized that's just like not sustainable, not good for the mental health. I was an average broker and an average broadcaster. And I was like, all right, I gotta pick one, and life was pushing me down the content broadcasting path.
It's so funny because like and I didn't know you at the time, but like even sitting on the sideline, I was like, oh, this dude should totally go in because you were natural at it. Like,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. And so I was like, this dude's got to go all in on media.
Yeah, no, I mean, it works both ways because like I don't regret not going all in earlier because I do think, and I think a lot of athletes will relate to this, like my relationship with football evolved. Like when I first exited, I was bitter towards the game in some capacity. I wanted something new. I didn't want to be around football every single day. But then I also knew in my head, I was like, dude, I was the teenager that used to watch, like 10 hours of NFL Network every single day. Like that love for football is going to swing back around. Let me keep at least watering that plant a little bit. And then sure enough, when you get to like that 4 years removed from playing, I've found that's easy because a lot of your peers are then done. Like, years 1 through 3, a lot of your peers are still playing. And it's like, dude, this is tough. Like that should be me, like that kind of stuff. Once you get to like year 4 or 5, the guys you're covering in college, you weren't on the same roster as them. The guys that you were battling with in college, most of them have had their NFL stint and they're gone, and it's just easier to be around the game, and that love for football came back around, and I'm grateful for it.
It definitely did. And so when did you get into sort of that analyst role?
Yeah, I would say, I called my first game the 2020 season, right? Yeah, or maybe 2021 season. I called UAB, Louisiana Tech, with Chris Hassel on the Stadium Network based out of Chicago. But it started even before that there was a little, when I was the backup quarterback at USC, on Friday practices, backup quarterbacks don't get any reps, and they would walk through 2-minute drill, and I would be like on the side with our special teams coach, shout out Scott Thompson, and we would just like bid it out of like play-by-play color commentator, and like I would announce, the 2-minute drill of like Kessler's pass is complete to Nelson Aguilar, he falls forward for 5, and they're going to give the ball to Ronald Johnson, and there was like a Ronald Jones, different USC running back, but we would like play that out, and it planted the seed of like, hey, this could be something. And then when I was hurt at Pitt, Pat Narduzzi gave me the mic. He was a intercom head coach guy. He gave me the mic, and like I announced the like freshman scrimmage with Kenny Pickett one time.
Nice.
In a sling in one arm, mic in the other. And again, I had people come up to me of like, yo, you should give this a run whenever the time comes. And then that time came, and then it was one of those things of, so to answer your question directly, I would say it like started when I would do, in the fall of 2018, I was training for the NFL in the mornings and doing like YouTube breakdowns in the afternoon of Pac-12 games. And that's right when Dan Orlosky's career had taken off. Mm-hmm. And he was doing breakdowns in his basement. And I was like, I can do that. And what happens if I add a little bit more production value? Mine didn't take off like Dan's right away, but they did transition me from Max Browne, former USC quarterback, to Max Browne, college football analyst. And that got me on like radio hits. And then just like anything in life, those radio hits led to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And once you get your foot in the door, like if you kind of hold up your end of the bargain, it's led to the next opportunity. And that's been basically like the past 6 years for me.
Nice. In addition to that, the analyst side of things, you really, really hit the ground running with content, like even more so with YouTube and short form and all the stuff that I've seen from you. When did that kind of, in addition to the analyst work with networks and such, when did that really form and take shape and really get that consistency down?
Yeah, it's probably the biggest mistake I've made so far in the broadcasting like content world is, to answer your question, it wasn't until summer of 2023. So if you do the math, that's like a 3-year gap of like when I was doing the YouTube stuff, and then YouTube, it kind of like accomplished my goal where like I got my foot into like the traditional broadcasting world. But like we've talked about, I was like doing the marketing stuff and doing the real estate stuff and always new content, but I don't know whether it was insecurity or I convinced myself I didn't have enough time to do it, or I didn't prioritize it. It took me 3 years to fully commit and go all in, to the point where I was posting, summer of 2023, I was posting, like four or 5 times a week, which, from 0 to that, that's a lot, but it took me a long time. I remember being in the meeting with Gary Vee, who, people who don't know of Gary Vee, he's like, one of the biggest content brains in the world. I remember being in that meeting summer of 2019 with his entire 30-person team being like, hey, we were once putting 10% of our resources to TikTok. We're now putting 50%. Like hey, 1, 2, 3, 4 person, you guys used to do this. No, you're doing TikTok now. And he was like, for all you guys, like, get on TikTok. That's going to be the opportunity. And I didn't listen to him. Again, I didn't prioritize it. Maybe it was insecurity, whatever it was. I didn't prioritize it. And then I saw some of my peers have success. Guys like you, I don't know if it was actually directly like you. Shout out for all the success you've had. But I was like, all right, this is just, I'm letting opportunity pass me by. I got to get in. So I'm glad I got in summer of 2023. But it was, 2 years, 3 years later than I probably should have been.
Hey, better late than never, right?
True.
And also really appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
Yeah, for
that means
sure.
a lot. It's honestly crazy. Just really quick point on Gary Vee. It's honestly crazy how right he's been about certain things. Like you look at, it's insane.
Wild.
You look at short form. You look at, I know they're kind of down right now, but you look at like NFT stuff. He was super early in on that. You look at the trading card space. Like he has called so many things where you have to kind of stop and not only give the guy respect, but be like, wow, okay.
And you can even go back further than that, like Google AdWords in like the early 2000s. He's got some trippy videos on that because it hits you in a certain way of like, dude, this dude was saying that 25 years ago, and he was buying Google AdWords when people thought it was crazy on like, he had a 95% click-through rate on his like email chain, like stuff that like seems bonkers nowadays that like he was hammering that. He was like one of the first guys on Twitter, one of the first guys with Uber. In his office, he literally has a sign. His brother was the first guy to ever take an Uber in New York City. So like early days. And which then probably 3 times a year, my wife and I will be having dinner because my wife's in the content space too. And it's like, what's Gary saying now? Because we need to pay attention to that and like dive into that. And his thing right now is virtual shopping, I believe it is.
Interesting.
Digital shopping. I don't know if that's the right term, but I guess it's a big thing in the Asian countries where it's, you go in store and it's like a whole like experience where you're like live streaming and like trying on things, and then like you're selling directly off of that like video of like that influencer like trying on whatever Adidas's next model is. I don't know. I haven't like dove into it, but that's his next thing. So maybe we all should dive in addition to AI, of course.
Interesting.
But yeah, Gary's always got something up his sleeve.
The shopping thing, a little augmented reality action there too, probably.
I actually don't know the nuances. Which is like maybe a lesson learned of like after this I need to go dive in because if he's saying it. But I think it's like you like walk into a store and it's a smaller footprint, and you're like, it's like for more influencers, content creators, that kind of thing. And you're like trying on the different products, and then your fans are watching you do that and they're connecting with the personality. But then they're also like, I like that shirt. Let me buy it. And it's like a QR code situation in some capacity. That's how I understand it. I got to dive in more though.
Yeah. Kind of wrapping up here, but I'm sure your dream over the span of your life has changed quite a bit. And I'm curious, like, what's like the dream now? What's the long-term goal? Where do you want to see yourself in 5-10 years?
Yeah, I struggle with that question. I do, because sometimes people are like, oh, like you're living out your dream right now. And I'm like, I don't mean to be a prick, but like, no, my dream was to be a NFL quarterback, and I'm not. And I don't mean to be like undercut that person's point, because I am grateful and I love the life that I have. But I still struggle with that. I mean, I think I'm on the path that I want to be on. I think if we had this podcast like 2 years ago, I would still be kind of figuring that out. I love the content space. And I treat, and I think you're probably the same way, I view the content space as just my own small business that I'm building. So it scratches the business itch there. But continue to pursue the broadcasting stuff too. My favorite thing in this industry is calling games in the booth on Saturdays. And a lot of the different content, especially football stuff that I do, that's kind of the North Star. So to continue into, I always say the dream's to call big time college football games on Saturdays, which had the pleasure of doing last year. We'll have the pleasure to do again this year, and kind of see where that takes me.
Yeah, dude, stoked for you. And it's honestly crazy. Like, and you're correct. I definitely do treat the media, my content, like a business, and we were talking a little bit offline about that. But it's also just mind blowing to me where the content goes and who it reaches. I mean, it's just the opportunities that have presented themselves, the people that have presented themselves, the people that have reached out. I just would have never ever imagined that even be possible.
Yeah, and it's trippy. I'd be curious your take on this too. Is like, because it's so unpredictable in that regard of like, you never know if this is going to land with Sports Illustrated, or if it's something with the University of Oregon, or if it's some booster at Oregon that's trying to start something for Nike, for whatever. And it's because it's unpredictable, it's really hard to like kind of plan for, but you have to trust that if you keep making good stuff, those partners will present themselves, which I find, like, especially as you like do like legitimate like financial planning, which is a separate topic. But it's like it's interesting because you just like don't know, like most other careers, you can project like, hey, if I invest what I'm investing right now, I'll get ABC down the road. Content's hard because you have to trust that those opportunities will come, but it's not a given.
Seriously. Yeah, tomorrow somebody could reach out and be like, Max, somebody from ESPN, we want you to be our next face of ESPN. Like, you don't know. You never know. And that's honestly the scary thing, but also the beauty of content is like, you may not know when the next thing is going to come, but you know something's on the horizon. And that's what like also keeps me going. But yeah. And
this will put a good exclamation point on your point right there, but I don't know when this is coming out, but I'll be. I just got a gig with ESPN, so I'll be working with them next year. Or this season, calling a full package of ACC network games with them. So that's the perfect, like, cherry on top for this of like, and I don't necessarily know if content got me that gig. I'm not totally sure, but that's one of those things of like, don't know what's happening. You get the couple emails, and then here we are, and then it'll all be about, the next thing and growing that piece of the business. But no, I'm fired up. It'll be a fun football season.
Dude, that's awesome. Also, I swear I did not know that. That was not planned.
I probably should give you a warning, but yeah, I mean, I don't know when this is going live, but it'll be, haven't announced it on my socials, but probably will by the time this is out. So it'll be fun.
100%. Yeah. I'm going to ask I ask every guest this, and I'm going to ask you this right now. Looking back at your career, number one, is there something that you would have changed, something different you would have done? And then number two, what would you tell yourself, your younger self?
I would have told myself to lighten up, which is the exact opposite advice of what I think a lot of high school kids need. I was an intense guy. I wasn't a robot. I went to the parties. I had friends. I was captain both schools. I wasn't a big stiffy. But man, I look back and I'm like, gosh, I was so intense of studying the playbook in astronomy class. And then I'm listening to stories of high school or college kids now from coaches of I can't get this guy to pick up his playbook even if he wanted to. And I look back, and I alluded to this in one of your first questions, but I was so intense. And I wonder if that hurt my playing ability because I struggled to turn the football off. I was always on, I very much subscribed to the Mamba mentality learnings and all that. And I don't know if that always helped me. I think it gave me peace of mind that hey, the hard work, that was my calling card. But I don't know if it always helped me play my best football. So that's always my message to guys is as corny as it might be, keep it fun. And I always knew that when I was playing, oh, of course it's a game. You can't work football. You got to play football. But I think, it's almost I should have had that in my mirror of have fun every single day because you'll play your best that way. And I just look back of my biggest fear when I was playing in college was football not working out and me being a bust. And that's my reality, and life is totally fine. And I live a great life, and I'm super blessed. And it makes me look back dude, all that worry that I had or whatever those emotions were didn't serve me and are kind of silly looking back. So that'd be my message to my younger self.
Yeah. And I think you kind of just gave me the answer too, but is there anything that you would have changed in your past?
Anything I would have changed? I mean, I always it annoys me when I listen to podcasts and people say no. It's oh no, it's my journey. But that's the truth.
No regrets.
It is. Yeah. But it's it really is. It really is the truth. I mean, to give something more tangible, knowing what I know now, I probably would have seen a sports psychologist early on in my career before the trouble comes. If you can build that muscle, just like you build in a quarterback coach, just like you build in a strength coach, that's what I would have done. And sometimes I get the question, people ask me hey, your future kids, if they're big time athletes, what will you do? That's something that I would put big consideration in of hey, you get to high school, just the same time you're getting a big time quarterback coach and you're starting to lift weights, go see a sports psychologist once a month, every 2 weeks, because I've found that when you wait until it becomes an issue, then it's oh wow, something's totally wrong. I got something wrong with me. I got to see a professional. If you do it beforehand, it's just built into your cadence. It's just part of coaching. I didn't have some huge, crisis or anything like that, but I just think with all the pressure and all the scrutiny kids are under nowadays, that's something that I probably would have done at an earlier age.
100%. Dude, Max, appreciate the time.
Good, man. Thanks for having me on, Adam.
Thanks so much.
This is fun.
That's all we have for today. If you enjoyed my conversation with Max, we have many more to come. Make sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you never miss a conversation that we have. And of course, last but not least, let me know in the comments who you'd like me to sit down with next.